Welcome back to the program. Today on the lifestyle segment, we'll be talking about the increase or the recent talk right now in the media about child abuse and what can be done to curtail this menace. Joining me today is His Eminence, Cardinal Onayekan. Thank you so much for joining us on today's program. He's the Archbishop of the Abuja Diocese. Also to his left is Lola Adeola Oni. She's a child protection and safeguarding advisor at Save the Children. Thank you so much for joining us on today's program. Good morning. Also, very lastly, we have Reverend Father Raphael. Thank you so much for joining us on today's program. Thank you. So when we hear child abuse can be sexual, it can be physical in the sense of human trafficking, labor work. So how would you define it in your own terminology?
Okay, well, child abuse is anything individual, organizations, people, institutions do or fail to do, which could directly or indirectly damage or harm a child's prospects into a healthy and safe adulthood. So it is anything anyone does, whether directly or directly. So I always try to emphasize indirectly as well, because sometimes we say, oh, I see this person doing something terrible to a child, hitting a child or beating a child, and I do nothing about it. And I tell people, you are not as better as the person, if not even worse, if someone is perpetrating abuse and you're doing nothing about it, so you're failing the child in that way as well. And there are just 5 categories of abuse. There's physical abuse, which is the beating, the hitting, the flogging of a child, punishments. You have emotional abuse. So when you're talking to a child, telling a child, you're worthless, you're stupid, and then you have neglect. Neglect is different from poverty. So neglect is you have the means, but you're withholding that means from the child, meaning so you're refusing to care for the child, to send the child to school, to give the child food and clothe the child, accommodation and all that. And then the next one is exploitation, which is where you have the child trafficking, the child labor, exploiting the child either for economic means or for social means. And then you have sexual, which is the rape, the incest, pornography. We have child pornography now. We have cyberbullying, all that. So, those are the main general categories of child abuse. Yes.
Father Raphael, when you hear beating a child falls into the category of child abuse, what's your response to that, given that our African culture, we operate with the means or the mode that if you spare the rod, you spoil the child. So you must discipline your child anytime he or she commits any offense, whether that's through spanking or that's through physical, sometimes aggressive communication. What's your response to that?
Okay, my response to that is that beating a child is always an unproductive venture. There are basic and very fundamental ways that corrections can be given without actually hitting the child, because that hitting and beating the child can result to a whole lot of, if I'll use the term, disability, can bring about physical injuries and psychological trauma eventually in the life of the child. So there are more better ways to correct a child other than beating a child.
Your Eminence, we've seen the increase in talks of sexual abuse amongst children, especially in the Catholic Church. The Pope came out and he spoke against it, that those people who are found guilty should actually be punished. What's your response to this?
My first response is that sexual abuse is not especially in the Catholic Church. Sexual abuse is everywhere. It just happens that the Catholic Church is, because of its level of spiritual high ground, happens to be targeted for serious investigations. The statistics are out there that if other areas were or even other religious bodies were subjected to the same kind of investigations that our Catholic Church actually did on its own, the situation is even worse. So we are dealing with a serious problem that has invaded our world. The basic issue is, do we really see children and the child as a blessing from God? And here we go to our tradition. Children are There are so many names about children. Children are a blessing, Amawumi, Amalonyi, Amalo. There are all kinds of things about the child. The modern trend that is trying to turn the child into a burden. And from that point on, things are falling apart. Since I'm a bishop, and also religious, we have a clear, what the scriptures say, obviously, is quite different from the stories, from the position that is taken by NGOs and things on this matter. They spare the rod and spoil the child is not only African, it is in the Bible. Actually, it is the Bible that says it. And I think our culture knows that you don't just leave a child to behave as it likes, because by the nature of things, a child is born and entrusted to the community, first to the parents. The child is not like the goat, which is born today, and give the goat 3 hours. It's already moving around, and it's on its own. At most, it will seek the breast of the mother. But as to how to move around, instinctively goes to that. Can you do that to a child? You can't. Not only do you need not only is the child completely helpless as it comes out of the womb, but it also continues to need direction until adulthood. And while we should be worried about maltreatment of children, I don't think we should allow ourselves to reach the extreme case where children are then left without any guidance.
So you believe in spanking, you believe in taking disciplinary actions when children act out of line?
One thing I would say, to put all that under one rubric of child abuse is not helpful. When a mother spanks her child, it's different from when a stranger or someone pounces on the little girl and rapes her. Do you put that on the same level? That we need to distinguish. When a mother spanks her child, is it because she hates the child? She wants to do what is best for the child. And I do not think we should allow this, what has become now the trend all over the world, to becloud our own mind and the reality we find on ground. The societies that have taken this thing too far have reached a stage now where the child can just walk to the police station and report his father for spanking him for doing something bad.
What's so wrong with that?
Yeah?
What's wrong with that?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, there's something wrong with that. There's something wrong with that. I do not know whether, therefore, how are you sure that the police is better to look after the child than his parents? What we need to do is to do our best to maintain a society that values children as precious. As you know, in our tradition, and people don't like us to talk about our traditional culture, but every group of the world have got traditional cultures. In our traditional cultures, the child belongs to the whole village. You don't wait for the father to come before you can discipline a child that is behaving in the village compound. Every elder was my father. Of course, they didn't beat me. My father used to beat me. He had the cane. In fact, he had the cane, and he knew where he puts the cane. And he tells me, "John, go and bring your cane." And I go and bring the cane.
But Your Eminence, are you taking into cognizance the increase in mental health issues that a lot of adults are facing today due to this over-spanking, over-scolding that happened during childhood?
Over-spanking. Well, I got spanking, but I don't feel any mental derangement from my father's.
Lola, how do you respond to that?
I would always like to respond. Okay, so I wasn't spanked as a child. I wasn't beaten as a child.
I was. You see, that's the point. I was. Okay, I was, but I have not gotten any wrong.
But where I stand is, or where we stand is, like child rights advocate is this. So you say it's okay to beat a child, and you say it's fine. But then we've seen
I didn't say it is fine. It depends on the situation.
But we've seen instances where beating have actually led to child deaths, where children are beaten up to the point where they get to the hospital and they are declared dead just from mere beating. And the argument is how can you draw the line between just spanking and actually hitting a child. So even in developed world, say in the Western world where they even have laws or legislations against beating of a child, they tell you that you can spank your child as long as you don't leave a mark and you don't use an implement. And because they are Caucasians, naturally, if you hit a child too hard, they would bruise easily. And so for an African child, you know, you can hit a child for so long until the point, it gets to that point where the child actually dies. And so it is always how to draw the line between the spanking that the mother would spank and the actual beating that would lead, that would cause serious injuries and grave harm. I have friends and I've seen people who say, well, my mother did this to me. I have this scar on my body to prove, you know, because of the beating. And this is the reason why we say, you know, beating, you should always look for other positive parenting techniques, you know, that you can use to correct your child, because for you to spank a child as an adult, it does mean that you have actually lost control. You really don't know what else to do. And so spanking is like, I can't do anything else. Let me just spank you. But most times, children don't even know why you're spanking them.
They're being spanked.
So
Father Rafo, I see you have something
No,
to say.
before
Before we do that, Your Eminence, let's take a break. We went into the streets and we asked everyday Nigerians their thoughts about this. So let's hear what they had to say.
Child abuse. It is like when you have an expectation of an adult from a child, giving a child a responsibility beyond himself, and because when there's responsibility are not meant, you tend to impose punitive sanctions on the child because you believe the child should be able to know a particular thing that an adult should know, which a child should not know, or giving a child a responsibility that is more than the child, bigger than the child, and expecting the child to carry out the responsibility like an adult. To me, that's a child abuse. And also, if you also give out a child, you know, as you giving out a child for to be employed by someone when the child is not ripe for employment, you are supposed to put the child under tutelage and train the child, but you are giving the child out for employment at a particular age. I think it's also abuse.
Child abuse means child maltreatment. It means denying a child certain rights, like the right to go to school, the right to be taken care of by parents, and some other things that could be counted as child abuse. When a child is found on the street hawking, when other children are in school, that is considered as child abuse. A lot of time you find children working as maids in other big people's house when they should be in school. It's also considered as child abuse. And I can say one of the reasons for this child abuse is poverty. If poverty can be eradicated in our country, I think child abuse to a good extent can also be eradicated.
Child abuse, it means a parent or a caregiver treating a child abnormally. That is what you as a parent supposed to do. That is, you are supposed to wash a clothes of adult, and a child of 5 years or 7 years, you are giving him that clothes to watch for you. Giving all the loads in the family for that child to watch, thinking that you are training that child to be strong. At that age, you are abusing that child of our physical being. Secondly, we observe that among some caregivers, those adopt a child, sometimes they abuse this child, even sexual abuse. That is, a child of 14 years, some of our country here, they give her their child to marriage at the age of 10 years, 7 years, 8 years. And this, their body, their metabolism has not grown to maturity to be given out in marriage. And their husband maltreats them. It's child abuse.
Child abuse, to my understanding, simply means the maltreatment of a child by a caregiver or by a parent. It can also be as a result of sexual molestation of the child by whoever that is the guardian of that child. So that is how I see child abuse. There are various forms of child abuse. Number one, when a child is living in a household, let's take, for example, a house help. Maybe the husband of that house may abuse the child, may want to force the child to do things that the child is not supposed to do ethically. And it will now lead, it will now be as a result of an abuse to that child, and it causes some psychological trauma to the child, more especially sexual act and physical abuse like beating up the child unscrupulously and doing so many obstinate acts.
Father Raphael, how do you respond to that?
To respond to the issue of child abuse, I first of all want us to clarify what a child is. Basically, we don't have any basic universal acceptable definition of what the child is.
There is.
The Child's Rights Act.
When I talk about universal definition, I mean you go to different areas, you have different age range for a child. Take, for example, the criminal code, our Nigerian criminal code, defines the child as any person who is below 14 years. Then if you go to the United Nations Convention on the Right of the Child, a child is defined as somebody who is below 18 years. So we have a difference of about 4 years. So coming to talk about beating a child as an abuse. Beating is something, personally, I don't subscribe to. But that does not rule out the fact that punishment to a certain level should not be meted on a child who is actually doing something that is wrong. There should be a level of punishment, not necessarily beating. If the punishment is to be meted out on the child, it is good to take into consideration and to have behind the mind the goal that punishment is for. Some parents punish their kids and their kids don't even know why they are being punished. That is one. They punish them. They don't know why they are being punished. Sometimes the punishment given is so much that even though they know they've done something wrong, they feel very bad that that kind of punishment is meted out to them.
Let's take some comments from social media. We have David Ahen, who said, how do we differentiate when discipline has become too extreme and crosses into the point of child abuse?
That is to be discussing, yes.
Yes. Another tweet, are there any active hotlines in the various Nigerian states that can be reached to report cases of child abuse? Then very lastly, we have Aya Ninja tweeting from Proud Niger 2019. A version of child abuse that is unlooked and spreads across Nigeria is the amount of children which are deprived of access to education, and how do we address this issue? So Lola, I'll let you respond to that.
Which of the questions?
All of them.
Okay. I think for the hotlines, I know Lagos is doing very well when it comes to having hotlines where you can report child abuse. In Abuja here, in Save the Children would always refer to NAPTIP. NAPTIP also has a very good hotline where you can report cases of child abuse, child trafficking, sexual abuse. And you also have some organizations as well doing very well with hotlines, you know, like WhatClef. You'll find those type of organizations. In terms of how do we ensure, you know, it doesn't get too far, like from instilling discipline to, which is the reason why we say there's really no point to hit a child. Because, and then if you're going to be hitting a child when you're very, very angry, when you know your emotion has literally taken over and you want to make sure that that child suffers, then that is the reason, that is where you see that it goes to the extreme. Because oftentimes we tell people, if you want to discipline your child, if your child has done something so terrible and you just can't, you really want to tell the child off, it's best not to even do anything at that point when you're hungry. Because to do anything would mean, you know, you will go to the extreme.
It's best to calm down,
it's just best to calm down, take some time,
process it
exactly.
Before
even yes, exactly. And even with that, the child will learn to even process that as well. And by the time you go talk to the child better understands. And I always give this example of my sister and a 3-year-old son. So if you beat my sister's son, you know, if she tries to spank and all that, he doesn't listen. And then one day I told her, why don't you tell this boy to face the wall? Now, face the wall is like the worst punishment for this 3-year-old boy. Meanwhile, you beat this child and this boy is not doing anything, like he does not even send you. But if you ask him, I'm going to ask you to face the wall now, he starts crying.
Wow.
So, you know, every parent needs to understand their children, their emotional makeup, and how can I best talk to this child in a way that this child will understand and not repeat that offense. And that is what every parent should strive to achieve.
Lastly, Your Eminence, and also Father Raphael, we have this question from social media by Adoku Reti. a lot of Nigerian parents can't differentiate between discipline and child abuse, as they tend to be overly physical with their children. Are there any church programs educating parents on this issue?
Maybe I should ask my parish priests whether they have programs on this. But as far as church teaching is concerned, the emphasis of church teaching is precisely on taking care of your child. After all, Jesus gave a good example. Let the children come unto me, and he brought them to himself and embraced them and blessed them. And even through a heavy curse, whoever does anything to scandalize these children, it's better that you it's better that you tie a big stone on his neck and throw him in the middle of the sea. I'm surprised that all these types of child abuse that I'm hearing, we have not mentioned spiritual abuse, which is perhaps the most serious one, or spiritual neglect, where a child is allowed to grow without any sense of morality and values. That is even more serious in terms of impact on his life in the future. Lola, you are doing a good work. Continue to do your work. But just recognize that there is a whole range between what a mother, because of the love of her child, does and what a stranger, because of evil, does. You are talking about how do you distinguish between discipline and child abuse. I think human beings, people normally would be able to know where they should be drawing the line. That somebody may overreact, of course that is possible. But to start sitting down and say, never spank a child. Never, never. Well, you can make that law if you like. I agree too that there are other ways of disciplining a child. By the way, I was a principal of a secondary school, and I never was able to hit any of my students. But I punished them often. My favorite punishment is go and start cutting grass until you are tired of being angry. No, and they know that. But the biggest punishment I know that they have is when I call them and scold them. We have to put things in context. If the basic relationship between a parent and her child is that of love, this spanking is part of that love. But if you have a situation when a parent actually sees this child as an intrusion and don't consider the child as a blessing from God, but as what I didn't expect this one. This is what is making some parents treat their children very, very badly. Just like those who kill their children in the womb. We are not talking about that, of course. Is that not child abuse? Those who kill the child in the womb.
Is it?
Well, is it not abuse to kill somebody? Yeah, of course, the modern language will not want to talk about abortion because that is the politically correct position to take. But the reality is there. The child in the womb is a human being, whether you like to agree or not. And if you kill the child in your womb, it's the worst of child abuse.
Well, that's also a topic to debate at another time. Father Raphael, I'll give you the last words. So are there any church programs that take care of these issues?
For now, we don't have any specified church programs that take care of upbringing of the child and, that discuss child abuse as a topic. But within the general programs of the church, these are messages we constantly pass to people, that love should rule both in the hearts of the parents, and that same love should be transmitted to the hearts of the children. Just to add voice to what His Eminence said, correction can be done in love. Spanking can be done in love. Growing up, I was spanked, but I have no problem with my parents doing that at the moment because I know most of the discipline I have today is as a result of the level of correction I got from them, the spanking included. So love should rule. Love should reign supreme in every family. That is the message we always give to parents. So even when they go about correcting their kids, they should do the correction out of love. And they should help their children understand that this correction is being done out of love and not out of hatred for that particular child.
Father Raphael, Lola, His Eminence, Cardinal Nayekan, thank you so much for joining us in today's program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching. We'll take a break right now and we'll bring you, it was the International Day of the Girl on October 11th, and we'll bring you video clips from that from Africa and across the world. Don't go anywhere.
Girls are not in any way lesser than boys. Are you in any way lesser than boys?
No.
Things supposedly meant for the male counterpart can also be applied to girls. Fortunately, the biological composition of girls are such that allows them to quickly adapt. You know, we are special human beings. We can adapt, we can persevere, we can tolerate. You can see some of our mothers, they will give birth to 10, 11 children. In this current world, who alone can do that if not a woman?
If you look at all the provisions of the Quran and all the religious books, there's always a preference for the girl child. In the entire Quran, there are 4 chapters dedicated to women. There is not one. There is not one dedicated to men. Can you imagine?
This morning, as we prepare for the International Day of the Girl, Disney launching an inspiring new video series.
Dreams, they allow you to see beyond your immediate circumstance.
Called Dream Big Princess, giving a voice to aspiring storytellers.
I've always wanted more.
Young women from the UN Foundation's Girl Up initiative, producing and directing interviews with 20 trailblazing women from around the world about what you can achieve when you dream big.
It's not only allowing women to be able to see what they're capable of, it gives to the whole world.
From doctors and movie studio heads to actresses like award-winning Emily Blunt and athletes like Paralympian Victoria Arlen.
Either keep dreaming or give up, and so I decided to keep dreaming.
Each video sharing a glimpse into a success story and offering advice for other big dreamers.